Welcome, everybody, back to another weekly live stream here on Celtics Digest. And on this episode this week, we're with a special guest, and we are very excited to have this special guest on our stream today. We have someone from Celtics blog, a famous TikToker, you could say, as well, in the Celtics media sphere, as well on Instagram. It's our guy, Ian, who also does work on the Celtics Weekly Show. Ian, thank you so much for coming on the show, and how you doing today, man?
Of course, I appreciate you having me. I'm doing good. I'm ready to talk some Celtics.
Awesome. And as you guys know, I'm always with my co-host. I got my guy Patrick as well. Patrick, how are you doing today on this afternoon? We got the Celtics versus the Suns. Get into that little, matchup. Jayson Tatum has that injury. It's going to be an exciting one.
Dude, I'm pumped. I'm hoping he's gonna play, but at the same time, I would love for him to rest. But let's see if Joe Mazzulla can get him to sit. I think this could be an argument in the locker room.
Nah, I don't blame you. I don't blame you. But we're going to have an action-packed episode. We're going to be diving in with Ian, asking him some Celtics questions, going over this Celtics team as a whole, looking at the team now, in the future, looking at some recaps of the games, and overall going over this Celtics team. And first off, Ian, we're going to get into some questions about you because you're the special guest. We want to give you some time to shine here on Celtics Digest. So first off, we're going to ask you with this question, and this doesn't have to be a specific Celtics player, but with I know your fandom and how diehard of a Celtics fan, I kind of have an inkling that it will be. But when did you initially become a basketball fan, and what player made you a basketball fan?
So I remember the first time I ever saw a Celtics game was back in like 2014, and that was during the season where like that was probably like the worst season they've had over the last like couple decades or so. So it wasn't the best introduction, but I can definitely say the person that got me to stay around and definitely become more like wanting to follow the Celtics a lot more was Isaiah Thomas in his MVP year. That was probably like that was the first year that I really started like paying attention to the Celtics more often because you always knew that the Celtics were good. Like they won the championship in '08. Like I knew that, but I started really following once Isaiah Thomas started getting there and once he started going crazy in the 2017 season.
Yeah, he's an absolute beast. And Patrick, I know you love you some Isaiah Thomas as well. The man, the killer of the fourth quarter. He is just absolutely an electrifying bucket. He's also, grinding in that G League right now, also trying to
Yeah.
get up to that, to a roster spot as well. He's trying his best. But, one of those, I guess not like Celtics greats because he didn't have like a long tenure here, but for the impact that he made on the Celtics team, it definitely was a statement for sure.
Yeah, I mean, dude, Isaiah Thomas had probably brought back that Celtics dynasty that they needed. Like they needed some exciting, excuse me, some excitement for the Celtics because of how bad they were. But they had this positivity coming from Isaiah Thomas, losing all those big four guys. Yes, it's a big four. LeBron said it today. Got to include my guy Rondo. You know that's why I started loving the Celtics. But I remember watching Isaiah Thomas against that rookie Kristaps Porziņģis in the TD Garden my first time, and just the energy that he brought into that building every single game was just unmatched.
100%. And that's what you love about that, like Celtic culture, Celtics passion. They give it all out on the court. And you kind of see that with some of these like intrinsic players that have been through the realms with this team through the years. And you see that with those hard nosed gems. Now, Ian, I asked you, who was your kind of player that made you a fan. But now with this Celtics team, you see them win a championship. You've been covering them, doing some work with them. Who is your favorite on the team, you would say, right now?
Right now, I mean, you can say it's a little basic answer, but it would definitely have to be Jayson Tatum. I remember like I think I was junior in high school at the time, the year that Tatum got drafted, and that was the first time I ever bought a Celtics jersey. Was one of the black statement jerseys because it was the first year the statement jerseys came
Oh
out,
yeah.
and I knew I had to buy a Tatum jersey. I didn't care that he was a rookie. I knew that he was going to be here for a long time. So it's still awesome to see how far Tatum has come, and now that he's become like top five, top three player in the league now.
Oh, I would definitely say that top three statement can definitely be in there. You don't have to hide that on this channel, dude. 100%. He's definitely atop of those ranks in the NBA, and that's kind of cool that you like have that player you kind of stuck with as well. You kind of got into the Celtics around that time. He gets drafted to this team, and that's the player you kind of gravitate to. And then obviously he has those high expectations, and he meets those high expectations as well. So you get to see that. Patrick, kind of going to you. Who is your favorite player?
Dude, right now, I mean, I would agree. It's got to be Jayson Tatum. I've got that same exact jersey. I wouldn't say that was my first, but my first one, you made me think. It was the short sleeve jerseys that they wore on Christmas. I have a Rondo one. It's a green short sleeve. One of my
Oh yeah.
favorite jerseys too. I don't know if it fits now, but I might feel like LeBron and want to rip those sleeves off. But yeah, man, it's got to be Tatum. I mean, you see what he's done for this team. I mean, he's clearly that number one, even with Jaylen Brown being 1B. But I mean, there's levels.
100%. And you see that with Jayson Tatum every single night on the court here as well. Ian, got a couple more questions. Just can you give some insight to the fans that maybe don't know what kind of content you kind of bring for the Celtics if they don't see you on TikTok? I know you also have your own YouTube channel as well. You do YouTube content writing. Is there any insight you can give to what you bring for the Celtics in that kind of sense as well?
Yeah, so mostly my content centers around recapping the games, live streaming during the games, trying to interact with just people being able to watch the games if they're not able to. I also write just other articles that I find that are interesting or just kind of things that like you're not going to see like often, whether it be like the breaking news kind of stuff or just stuff that interests me as a whole. But yeah, I kind of try to cover the Celtics on like a daily basis and try my best to kind of make sure everything's up to date for people that might not know.
100%. I know I follow you on, all the social media platforms. So I see all your updates, even in your Instagram stories, your TikTok reposts. I see all the Celtics content that be putting out there. So you definitely do more than enough effort in that regard, 100%, I would say. So and I think Patrick could agree with that as well. We see how much you put out there and you definitely do that fair share. And, I've the articles as well, hitting those, the 10 takeaways, the breakdowns of the games, but also looking at those, unique and niche stories is also very interesting, and finding out kind of those hidden details about the Celtics team as well.
Definitely.
And then lastly, we got one last question. Since you are pretty prominent, in the Celtics sphere, you got 100K on TikTok. I know you just posted about that, reminiscing on it. When you go to these games, I know I see you sometimes posting at them. You get to go a little bit more than Patrick and I do. Do you get recognized at these games? And when you do go to these games, how does that feel when you get that recognition from some of these fans that, walk up to you and you say, "What's up?"
Yeah, I do get recognized a lot, and honestly, I never even expected that when I first started making videos and stuff. It was just something for me to do, and obviously, I started during like 2020, so obviously, you weren't going to any games or anything. So
Hmm.
the first time I went to a game was Game 4 during the 2021 Nets series where they lost in five, but it was the first time they allowed like full capacity fans back in TD Garden. And then the first time I was there, I just had like million people coming up to me and telling me they like my stuff, and it's still crazy to me now that like people still, like they know me just from watching my videos.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. I've only gone when I went to the parade, I got recognized by one person on the train, and it made me feel so great. You know what I mean? Just that one recognition. So
Oh
I
yeah,
can
for
only
sure.
imagine like how that must feel. Going to those games and have people come up and like, does anyone ask to like take a picture or anything like that? You know what I mean? Like being like, "Yo, Ian, let's tag a pic or something."
Oh yeah, all the time. All the time. And like sometimes I'm either going with my friends or I'm going with family and they just like roll their eyes in the background because it's like it just seems to happen so often sometimes. So it's kind of funny when it happens still. But I love it. I love it. It does make me feel kind of like validated in a way where it's like, yeah, like people actually do like the content.
100%. And I can speak not only for myself, but I think Patrick on here as well that we do appreciate the content as well. And I know a lot of people that I, a message saying that I was having Ian on my stream. They're like, "No way, you're having Ian on." So definitely got a lot of people, very psyched up to have you on here. So once again, thank you so much. And kind of getting into some of those, personal questions and kind of answering, how you work in this media sphere for the Celtics as well. But I know some Celtics fans want to get into some actual Celtics content, kind of getting into the meat and bones of this team and kind of exploring some things. So we can dive into that now. And Patrick, what would you like to kind of get into first? I've been yapping and rambling here. Let's let you have this discussion here.
I mean, I would love for you to talk about this Celtics Suns game, Bruce. I mean, this is a fun one for you, isn't it?
Oh, yes, it is. Yes, it is. As the Celtics and the Suns, as we all know, I cover for both and do some work for both. And it's going to be an interesting one. The hot Suns, I was mentioning before, coming into this game, Celtics on the road. Jayson Tatum, dealing with that ankle injury. We can kind of get into that. But I think the Celtics are, going up against a team in the Suns that is pretty hot, but has been playing against some weak competition. And I think we all know the Celtics are a well-oiled machine. I believe I saw a tweet before we went live that they're chasing their longest win streak of the season with 7 games, I believe, with this game or something like that. So the Celtics team has a purpose, has some determination, regardless of Jayson Tatum playing or not, to go out and beat this Phoenix Suns team. And I do think that they will go, balls to the wall regardless. With Jayson Tatum, kind of wanting to play in this game seemingly so far, seems like they're going to try to go full strength.
Definitely. I think anytime the Celtics are going to match up with a guy like Kevin Durant and Devin Booker and stuff like that, like Tatum and Brown are going to get up for those kind of matchups. And I to be just entertaining as every other game that the Celtics have played on this road trip so far, especially against like the top tier teams in the league. And the Suns might not have the best record per se, but they still are a solid team that you can't really like overlook in any way, shape, or form. So I'm excited. I know games against Kevin Durant and the Celtics are always going to be fun games. So and for some reason, it feels like sometimes the Suns always can have the Celtics number because there have been like games over the last few years where the Suns just like blow out the Celtics for no reason, but it happens the other way too. So
Yep.
it'll be interesting.
I think the matchups will be definitely cool, especially if Jayson Tatum is playing, seeing him versus Kevin Durant. Love to see some Bol versus Kristaps Porziņģis. I think that's a conversation that can be had, especially playing the both of those guys. Would love to see how Colin Gillespie does with Jrue Holiday guarding him. There's a lot of like interesting matchups that can happen tonight, and especially with the Jaylen Brown stuff that Nick Wright had to bring up. Definitely like an interesting matchup in many different ways, other than just the game.
100%. You mentioned, the trade, I guess, logistics. I'm not really buying too much into that. I don't know about you, Ian, with this Kevin Durant drama, but I'm not really buying much into that. I think the Celtics would have to kind of dismantle too much of their roster for something that's not necessarily a need for this team.
Yeah, and like there's not an easy way to really even trade for Kevin Durant. It's either you trade Jaylen Brown, which I really don't think they want to do, or you have to trade a bunch of depth guys, whether you have to trade guys like Derrick White, Kristaps Porziņģis, Jrue Holiday, Sam Hauser, Peyton Pritchard, like any assortment of those kind of players you're going to have to get rid of. And I feel like it doesn't feel worth it for a team as deep as the Celtics are to trade all of that depth for a guy in Kevin Durant, who, yes, he's a good player, but at the same time, he is going on 38 years old, and it just doesn't feel worth it at that point.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
that kind of resonates how with me and Patrick feel on this situation too. Like it's not necessarily a need also, but like the age is a little not as a concern, but I feel like with the kind of direction the Celtics team has with Jaylen Brown, you're not going to be trading a younger superstar who can still progress for one that is, maybe hit his peak or, still at his peak, but could be digressing in a couple of years. So I think that's kind of the smart decision for the Boston Celtics. And who knows, maybe with Jayson Tatum out, with Jaylen Brown being that, main focal point, we could see Jaylen Brown have a really big impact versus this game versus the Phoenix Suns as well.
Yeah, I mean, I would really love for him to have a big impact if that's the case, because I talked to you about this the other day, Bruce. Jaylen Brown has not been shooting the ball well. And that's kind of been like a little bit concerning, especially as we're entering the end of the season here. I know he's been dealing with that knee injury and a couple other things, but I mean, this isn't like the same looking Jaylen Brown that we've seen the last 3 games that he's played, only scoring 10 points, 9 points, 8 points. So it's really just like a different guy that we're looking at here. And if Jayson Tatum's not playing tonight, I would love for him to step up and really show us why he's that Finals MVP type of player. And that's just what I'm looking forward to today if Jayson Tatum's not playing.
I agree. And I think that obviously he's dealing with those injuries. It's something definitely to keep an eye on, I believe, with, Jaylen Brown. But I feel like with this extra rest that the Celtics have gotten as well, with him getting those couple of days off, should definitely boost him to kind of take off for the Celtics in this game if need be. And I think that's something to kind of keep an eye on as well. Ian, when we look also at this Celtics team, not only on the court, there are some, talks, but also off the court, there are some talks as well with, the sale and some future implications. And I don't know if you've been really keeping up with it. You most likely have because you've been doing all this Celtics stuff like us, but you've been seeing obviously the new news, and Noah had that new article that kind of came out on Celtics blog referring to Brad Stevens meeting with Bill Chisholm. What are your kind of, initial thoughts from Bill Chisholm? As I'm kind of, very calm with this kind of transition. I'm not really as freaking out as much as maybe some people would be.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like he's on board. It feels like he's a Celtics fan. If you watched the interview that he had with Abby Chin on NBC Sports
Mhm.
Boston against the Kings, him and his wife seem just overall just super happy to be here, and that's something. The first sign is obviously you love to hear that. That's the best part about it. But I think it's kind of too early to judge really anything that he's going to do until, those tough decisions that we were talking about earlier is, time to make next year. The Celtics are going to be very much over, very much over the second apron. It's going to be at least a $500 million like price tag just for player salaries alone. So it'll be interesting to see how he navigates it. If he, wants Brad Stevens to trade away a guy who is making a lot, whether it be a guy like Jrue Holiday or Kristaps Porziņģis, but it kind of feels too early to judge anything until I guess it's about, time to make legit decisions. But I guess we don't have to worry about that really until the off season.
Yeah, I mean, I think the big decision too just comes down to if the Celtics win the championship. I think that's what Nick Wright was kind of getting at with this trade with the Suns, and it was just a what if. And that's really if what if the Celtics win the championship, then what are they going to do? Because you really want to keep that team together until it fails. We've seen the Warriors do it as well. They kept all those guys together for as long as possible, but I don't think their money was looking like this.
I would agree, and
Well, I don't
I
know. It's also different because they were fine paying over like
Right.
$700 million in like salaries, but the problem was the tax penalties and like all of the other penalties involved weren't a thing back then.
Right.
So they didn't have a problem with it. However, now it's just kind of a different age of how the Celtics are going to have to maneuver themselves.
100%. And when you kind of look at this, you kind of mentioned that, Patrick. They obviously want to keep this championship core intact. They want to keep pushing for these championships with these teams. So obviously, kind of staying afloat in somewhat, even if they drop a little bit below, they're still going to be around that line. It's not like they're going to completely go under and duck under, kind of, strip everything down, which is good to know as well. But I think you kind of brought up a good point, Ian, where we kind of have to wait what he has to do in his kind of command. And we also, kind of won't see that. I mean, maybe we will. We won't necessarily know who's making the moves behind the scenes, but he's going to be working with Wick Grusbeck for these next 3 years as well. And I don't know if you saw, but I made it a little bit of analogy with, the Jedi with the Padawan, with Wick Grusbeck and Bill Chisholm kind of being in there and kind of watching and learning. And I think that's going to be really great for not only him himself to kind of figure out the Celtics' direction and path, but also for him to form those connections with Brad Stevens. Because we saw with Wick, he was the initial one to kind of make those decisions, to make those trades going into this offseason, to move off Marcus, to move off Robert Williams, to get those additions to take us over the hump. So I'm kind of curious to see if Bill Chisholm will have that kind of same idea as well with this Celtics team.
Yeah, I mean, all signs as of right now obviously feels like he will, but
Mm-hmm.
like we kind of keep saying, it all kind of depends on, how his what he feels is, the right decision moving forward.
100%, 100%. And when we look also at this Celtics team as well, there's some players, obviously, like Jayson Tatum, who we talked about, that had that key injury. We talked about Jaylen Brown a little bit. There's also some, underappreciated or maybe undervalued, I think, Celtics players as well. So, Ian, I'll kind of take this one to you. Is there any player that really has like stood out on this Celtics team, off the bench, or maybe hasn't gotten as much praise that you've seen in the Celtics media sphere that you think should get some love?
Definitely off the bench recently, I would have to say Baylor Shireman has provided a lot more than I thought even like really possible. Like when we drafted him, I remember at the time Kyle Filipowski was still on the board and I thought the Celtics were going to take him, but they didn't end up doing that. They took Shireman, and obviously I watched him in March Madness, and he was really good in March Madness. But when he first started with the Celtics, he struggled to really find his shot, struggled to kind of play within the team. But I don't know really what happened over the last couple months or so, but he has looked like a completely different player. Once the shots started falling, everything else kind of feels like it clicked into place for him. He was always providing energy. He's an elite rebounder. He's an elite what looks like an elite passer if you watch the game against the Kings the other night, but he is just always he is always everywhere on the floor. And if you want to play for the Celtics and endear yourself with the fan base, that's probably step one to really being one of those like top tier fan favorite players. And I think Baylor Shireman definitely deserves more minutes moving forward. And I don't know, who knows? Maybe he'll make an impact on a playoff game in the future.
Yeah, I mean, Bruce and I have been talking about Baylor Shireman a lot recently. I mean, he killed both of our teams in the Big East. I mean, he's scored 1,000 points at two different schools. He could score at all three levels. And just like you're saying, like getting on the ground and getting gritty, I mean, that's what people love Marcus Smart for, having that type of energy to come in and change things around just with his energy and just getting on the ground. And I completely agree. That's how Celtics fans are going to fall in love with him. And I think that's where his confidence comes from, too. It's just that's Big East basketball, Ian. That's just a Big East ball right there. And he's honestly, I think with Sam Hauser being out, like with the last few games, kind of gaining some confidence and filling in that role. But I think he could do just a little bit more than Sam Hauser can when it comes to just attacking the lane and like kind of getting to a mid-range shot instead of just being a spot-up shooter.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
would
it's
agree.
interesting you say that about. I was gonna sorry about that, but
No,
I
you're
was just
good.
gonna
No, you're
talk
good.
about Hauser because it's kind of interesting. The thing with Hauser, he's kind of had a rough year when it comes to staying healthy
Right.
and like being able to hit his shots consistently. But I don't know. I feel like if you are able to run out Hauser and Shireman at the same time, you're not necessarily going to have a problem
Oh,
because we've seen any lineup with Tatum in the bench is normally going to work. So
Mm-hmm.
if you're running Tatum, Pritchard, Hauser, Shireman, and Cornette, that's not necessarily the worst possible outcome. You're still going to be able to succeed on the floor, and that's going to be huge for the Celtics. So it'll be interesting to see what they do with Hauser because he is. It kind of feels like there's sometimes where it's like, is Shireman going to take Hauser's position at some point? But I mean, at this point, I feel like I still have confidence in Hauser that he's going to be able to perform. So I guess we'll just have to see.
No, I agree. I think that's kind of like the main takeaway from this Baylor Sharman kind of ascension over these last couple games, especially on social media, which can be a little bit polarizing each way. As we all know, it can be oh, he needs to take these minutes, always losing these minutes, and obviously in the grand scheme of things, it's not like an immediate impact. But I obviously see where you kind of standing because there are not obviously the same player, but a lot of similarities in their type of play. Obviously, Baylor Sharman and Sam Hauser kind of have different specialties. Obviously, Sam Hauser being more of that catch and shoot player compared to Baylor Shireman, and Baylor Shireman having those playmaking skills. But you mentioned the hustle, the tenacity, and we also saw that with Baylor Shireman on the Celtics team. But we also saw it in the summer league when he dove into the stands and went to go
Oh,
get,
okay.
get that save and stuff like that. And I know Patrick and I have seen that from the Big East play. So love that hustle, love that tenacity, and something that is ingrained in that Celtic culture, not just from like Marcus Smart, but like dating back to the Rondos and the KGs, the era where we grew up, and even before that, from watching the Celtics documentary as well. You get that so much history of how much hard work and discipline is put onto that floor for the Celtics. You really see that within these players, and Shireman's been able to do that as an offensive player, as that defensive player as well. I also like his ability to kind of get better at these things every single night. We see that with Sam Hauser and Peyton Pritchard throughout the years. They've been able to, get better at different aspects of their game. Peyton Pritchard coming in, being the catch and shoot player, then, being able to create his own shot, now getting those offensive rebounds, scoring layups in the playoffs. And we're seeing that, I think, with Sharman in every single game, him just getting increasingly a little bit better. And I think we're going to see that development come into next year as well.
Definitely. And we were kind of talking about the differences between Hauser and Shireman, kind of like what you say. When it comes to Hauser, I think people kind of underrate his ability. Like once he hits a shot, there's a good chance that he's going to rattle off, 5, 6 threes in a row. And I'm not saying Shireman can't do that, but at the same time, the ability that Sam Hauser has coming off the dribble when it comes to pull up and just shooting the ball is kind of something unmatched, and no one else really on the team outside of maybe Peyton Pritchard can really have that kind of same impact. So whether it is, people wanting Sam Hauser not to play, I feel like it's still important to have him there. And kind of like what you say, it's important, just the different dimensions that the Celtics have. That's what makes them such a dangerous team. They can roll out any, group of random guys that they come off the bench and they're going to find success one way or another.
Yeah, I think another thing with Hauser too, me and Bruce and I were talking about it, how much better he's been on the move shooting his threes as well. His defense is underrated, but he's also been attacking the paint a lot more recently. I'm starting to see him shoot some twos. I'm like, Sam Hauser shooting twos now. What's going on? But I mean, there's also that competitive aspect too, Ian. Like with Baylor Scheinman, you're Sam Hauser on the bench, you're injured, you're watching this rookie start cooking. He's like, oh, this guy's gonna take my minutes. I really gotta just step up and play like a little bit harder. So I think just the competition as well between the two of them and a few other guys on the bench is just a huge part. But that's where I think the Celtics are going to succeed come playoff time because they could run a 10 bench rotation like during the playoffs and have no issue. And if you're the Knicks, you got like 6 players that are going to play, and that's what you're going to deal with.
Yeah, I agree. And
Definitely.
when you look also at some of these Celtics players as well, loving Baylor Sharman, loving Sam Hauser. We obviously know Peyton Pritchard's had that emergence as well. There's also some other, underrated players. Luke Cornett with Jayson Tatum. Patrick and I did a video talking about how impactful he has been, in that pick and roll with Jayson Tatum and just as a reinvention of his game and as a different type of big that has helped out with the Celtics in this run. We've also, talked about Neemias Queta on this channel, Xavier Tillman, stuff like that. Is there like an underrated player, I guess I could ask, on this Celtics team? Could be, someone that doesn't really get enough playing time or someone you think that could potentially blossom if they were in a different situation or, get some more playing time next season?
I mean, I would love if Jordan Walsh would be able to get more playing time at some point. I loved Jordan Walsh coming out of college. I thought his defense was insane, and I feel like it's kind of like a catch-22 though, because there are times where his shot's not going in, and he's somewhat of a liability on the floor on the offensive end. But if you're the Celtics, I feel like you have enough talent to overcome that. And it's just kind of going to depend on, if his shot can become more consistent and if he can hang with, these other guys that he's kind of competing with. It's going to be interesting to see if he can get minutes from a guy like Hauser or Shireman or something like that. But I don't know. I feel like if Jordan Walsh got the opportunity, I feel like, over the course of, the regular season, he would be able to make a legitimate impact at some point.
Yeah, and I think also with Torrey Craig kind of being added to this team here, kind of takes away from some of his defensive minutes that we've seen. But I think he
Yeah.
really has to turn into more of a defensive specialist to kind of get those minutes because his shooting isn't the best. I mean, he was a great player coming out of college and high school, but I mean, he's got to find his minutes in a way that Baylor Shireman is getting on the floor and doing all the dirty work, and that's how they're going to get their minutes. But I think if next year comes along, I don't see Torrey Craig being on this team, but I think he's going to have to turn into more of a defensive specialist and a guy that's going to have to lock up like 1 through 4 and be confident in that and just really be in that defensive lineup.
100%.
Definitely.
And I
But
think
he's also super young too, so
Yeah,
he's
he is.
got. I
I
feel
mean,
like he still
20,
has
20
time
years
to
old. Like,
develop.
Yeah, he was drafted as a rookie out of college, as a freshman. So he obviously has that growing room as well. And I like what the Celtics have been doing with players like Baylor Sharman, players like Jordan Walsh, kind of running them in the G League and having them develop there kind of for that first year because they obviously can't get that immediate impact, immediate run with the Celtics squad, but also keeps them healthy, keeps them fresh, and allows them to play alongside other greats and see the history between the Maine Celtics and parallels of if you work hard in Maine, you can also get your spot, not even just as an undrafted guy, but even on a guaranteed roster a spot to make an impact in a future season. And I think we're going to see that within Baylor Sharman, with Jordan Walsh, and whoever else the Celtics kind of look forward with the draft. But Ian, before we sign off, before we get going, I want to ask your prediction for tonight's Celtics game versus the Phoenix Suns. I don't know necessarily at the moment if we have the Jayson Tatum update. The game starts at 10 p.m., so probably won't get it for a little while. But what are your predictions? Who do you think is going to be the most productive scorer, and what would be your score record?
I would say if Jayson Tatum plays, I feel like the Celtics do have a better chance of winning overall, obviously. But even if he doesn't, I still feel like this is a game where Kristaps Porziņģis is going to become a big factor. From what I've seen, I'm not really sure recently because I haven't been keeping up with the Suns a lot as of recently. But as I've seen, they have a problem with bigger defenders or bigger players who are trying to, facilitate like big men. So I'm not sure if Bol can necessarily keep up with a guy like Kristaps Porzingis. So I would expect a big game out of Kristaps Porzingis if I had to guess. He has been playing super well ever since he's come back from the illness. Granted, it's been against teams like the Nets and the Jazz, but still, it's still been uh, it's still been good that he's been able to come back and play at a high level. So I would expect him to continue the hot shooting, and I think he would probably be the guy that the Celtics lean on more if Jaylen Brown's having an off game. So, and I guess I'd say it's a close game, so I'd probably go like, I don't know, 112, 108, maybe around there.
Nice. Okay. So definitely a good fight between the two teams with the Suns being pretty hot. Patrick, what about you?
Yeah, I mean, I think that we're looking at a Kristaps Porziņģis first quarter like heater that we see constantly with him. But I think my heart is really wanting me to say that that's Jaylen Brown in that case, just to see him kind of get back into the swing of things because we know Kristaps came back well. He still said he's not 100%, which is unbelievable. But I mean, I would love to see Jaylen Brown kind of go ahead and take that role because those are our first quarter guys regardless. And I think with Bradley Beal being out, I mean, that doesn't really help the Suns defensively, but I mean, it gives the Celtics another look on offense, especially with Jaylen Brown. So hopefully it's those two, the cookies and cream, kind of getting at it with no Jayson Tatum. But I'm seeing like a 115 to 103. I think that they're going to get to a hot start, and the Suns are going to have some trouble kind of fighting back, and then they're going to get those points back when it's garbage time.
All right, all right. And as the Phoenix Suns expert over here on the
Yeah,
left,
this guy's got the Suns tonight. Listen up.
there will be no Bradley Beal, but that has helped the Phoenix Suns over this last
Right.
stretch as they've been able to play good without him. So I do think the Suns are going to come in with a little bit of vendetta, trying to beat this, Celtics team that is hot. But I do believe that this Celtics team will be able to overpower the Suns' disastrous defense, even if it has gotten better over these last couple of games with the amount of firepower.
Flip it.
Yeah, with the amount of firepower that they have on this team. You mentioned Kristaps Porziņģis, Jaylen Brown. I think they're going to be very effective. The Suns also don't really have any primary defensive guards, so if a player like Derrick White or Jrue Holiday gets hot from three-point range, I could see them also being a big X factor if Jayson Tatum isn't playing. And ultimately, the Suns' main defenders is a rookie, Ryan Dunn. So him going up against Jaylen Brown and Jayson Tatum is also going to be a struggle if both of them are available. I'll go in the middle of both of you guys. I'll go a 110 to 104 win. So I'll go a 6-point win, a little bit closer than Patrick, but a little bit bigger than Ian. Once again, I think it will be a fun, exciting game for the Celtics fans. Once again, we have to stay up, wait till 10 p.m. That's obviously ass to have to do on the East Coast. But once again, we are going to be staying up till, that prime 1, 2 in the morning, not being able to sleep right away, falling asleep at 4, having to get up ready for work. But that's what you do when you care and you love about this Celtics team. So once again, I want to give a huge shout out to everyone that was in the chat today, able to hang out with us. I want to give also a huge shout out to our special guest, Ian Inangelo, for coming by on the stream today. It was super awesome to have you come by once again. If you guys want to check out Ian, make sure to follow him on Twitter. You can follow. I will post his Twitter in the description for you guys. He also makes work for TikTok and Instagram. So if you want some Celtics updates, definitely follow him there. I believe it is the same tag as his Twitter. And then he also does work for the Celtics Weekly Podcast and Celtics blog. So if you ever want to catch Ian making some work on the Celtics on YouTube or his writing, definitely check him out because he puts out some fantastic work.
Appreciate it. Thank you so much. And definitely, ever need me to come on again, I'll definitely be able to do that.
Appreciate
Awesome.
that, man.
Yeah, we
Appreciate
would love
having
to
me.
have you back on the channel as well. You know that Patrick and I will definitely be looking forward to that. And maybe we can get, some good, a bunch of Celtics creators on the channel. We can get some good discussion between all of us. I think that would be some grand fun. But once again, thank you guys so much for tuning into the chat. Thank you guys so much for letting us know your thoughts. And once again, a huge shout out to Ian for coming again. But we'll catch you guys in the next weekly stream, Wednesdays at 6 p.m. So make sure to stay up to date and stay tuned. See you guys next week. Have a great rest of your week and go Boston Celtics. Peace out, everyone.